And we are back this time with Kevin Lanzo. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alexander. Thank you for inviting me today and happy to speak to your audience.
Yes. Could you briefly introduce yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Kevin Lanzo, PharmD. My main work these days is in consulting. I have my own consulting firm called Pharmaca Clinical Consulting. I work with drug development sponsors on clinical development planning, as well as investor relations. And more recently, my work has been on activating clinical sites to psychedelic research capacity. Say if they're working at neuroscience clinical trials and want to get into the psychedelic space, help them with that. In addition to all that work, I'm also executive in residence with Lionheart Ventures, and I'm here at the conference this week presenting on behalf of Lionheart. My talk will be tomorrow.
Great. And what brings you to the conference beside, I guess it's the talk, but any special interest in PTDD conference?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my second time attending this particular conference series, the Psychedelic Therapeutics Drug Development Conference. I've been working in psychedelics in various capacities for about 12 years now or so. And I find myself at this intersection of biotech, venture capital, and the clinical research implementation. I care a lot about translation of the science into the real world. I guess a double translation from the lab to the clinical research lab, and then ultimately to reaching patients. As a pharmacist, I care about the full spectrum. And I find this particular event to be really wonderful in that they have that full throughput of people that know the molecular mechanisms of psychedelics, as well as conducting clinical research. Many sponsors are here, and there's a lot of sites also conducting the work on a day-to-day basis, and people on the ground in, say, Oregon, that are looking at how these medicines are getting out into the public now and in the future post-approval.
And what do you think is exciting this year at the conference or at this moment in time in the psychedelic field?
Yeah, there's so many things going on that are really exciting. I mean, the biggest is that Compass Pathways is poised to be successful, I believe, in their clinical development. Positive phase 3 data just came out very recently that looks, definitely good enough to be FDA approved from my perspective and perspective of many, many people I've spoken to. So based on that and many other sponsors that are close to the finish line, I believe, and my colleagues at Lionheart Ventures also believe, that it's just a matter of time before psychedelics make it to becoming FDA-approved medicines. And so we're really looking at what is the next generation of these treatments going to look like, these psychoplastogens, neuroplastogens, the non-hallucinogenic versions, which companies are developing them, how are they describing the effects, and how does the clinical data compare to the classical psychedelics? Yeah, so how that space is unfolding, and I think that we can see a really good picture of that here. A number of companies are really showing up. I know, for example, Xylo, Sam Bannister is on a panel later today or tomorrow. They're doing these neuroplastogens, for example. I think Bob from Equilus was talking about his not less or non-psychoactive version of ibogaine analogs. Lots of activity there.
Are you an advocate for neuroplastogens? Do you believe we don't need the trip to reach the destination?
Well, yeah, I have to hedge my answer a little bit. So I suppose personally, or maybe as a scientist, I see the evidence coming out of academic labs that the psychedelic experience has a major effect on the efficacy. That being said, I think it's like a really reasonable and surely test-worthy hypothesis of whether the neuroplastogens, psychoplastogens can provide similar benefits. Maybe a lower, how do I say it? Maybe just a less strong effect, I suspect, than the full psychedelic experiences. But the way I think of it is like we need both in order to scale this, right? Like there's a spectrum of illness severities out there. I just want there to be, many options for patients. And from a more like investment perspective, it's good to bet on treatments that are more compatible with the medical system as it is, as they're more likely to be taken up by pharmaceutical companies and receive like investment from major firms, which is what we're seeing.
And I know we're only at the first day of the conference, but do you have any takeaway already from the conference, or is that too early to say?
Takeaways. Well, for me, most of my takeaways are from the conversations that I've been having in the hallway, and that is that people are getting really good at the clinical research implementation of psychedelics now, but there are these really clear barriers that are halting further uptake. We had one session early this morning from a representative at Worldwide Clinical Trials talking about the complexity of some of these protocols, and how some sites are finding it like economically challenging to implement, the amount of monitoring that's required, and how many raters need to be on site, for example. Just a number of dynamics that are difficult to implement. And yeah, I think that we're going to see regulatory alignment coming soon about how to streamline these things, especially after this first approval gives like a more clear pathway, I think.
So apparently AI is being used by the FDA to assess, the submissions. How do you think yourself working through for designing a proper clinical trials, knowing that you have an AI in place that will assess everything? Does that influence your work at all, or to streamline the progression?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, AI is being used everywhere in clinical research these days, and I mean, pretty much every industry is being revolutionized. I don't think there's a role for AI in protocol development at this point. I don't think it's really advanced enough for that, or at the very least, like, data collection for how like the important parts of the protocol to include, and then a human will discern which style of protocol you want to actually implement. Now, I guess I would say that for data analysis and interpretation, I think that's a much more reasonable use of AI and likely to be implemented right now by many sponsors.
Yeah, I was thinking more like the FDA uses AI to assess the drug that's been, the protocols associated around the drug that's been submitted. And so how to counter that AI, or how to adapt to that AI that will, judge the submission is what I was asking.
Okay. Do you mean to like improve likelihood of regulatory success, that kind of thing?
Yeah, how to maximize the chance of the submission, knowing there is a particularly FDI AI that will evaluate the submission. I don't know if that's possible or not, but
I couldn't tell you. I think that until we have more information,
right.
It's basically just treating it as like talking to the regulators.
Yeah.
Do you have other ideas, or has anyone had other thoughts for you about this?
No, I just thought about this today, based on the speaker tomorrow. Yes, I think it can. It's not necessarily something ominous or difficult. It might just be common sense, but it will probably revolutionize how we submit a protocol.
Well, one thing that I can say in regards to the clinical trial execution is I know that during dosing sessions for psychedelics, there are certain companies that are gaining, really being used all the time for the AI video processing of sessions and like sentiment analysis of in people's faces as they're performing like their endpoint assessments, for example. You can analyze the content of the words spoken during the sessions, and AI will analyze this for you and develop an idea of how effective the treatment is, how consistent with the protocol the facilitator is being during the session. Yeah, that's called fidelity adherence, and that the FDA cares a lot about. If you can prove using an AI analysis that the clinical sites are adherent to the protocol that the sponsor has written, then you can prove that it's a well-implemented trial. And this reduces noise and errors and biases and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe it's an unfair advantage the FDA has over, the scientists trying to develop a drug, because they're not assessing the same reality in a way. But anyway, that's for a conversation for later.
Yeah, that's an interesting take for sure.
What are you currently working on? Is there any compound you're helping develop right now, or is that confidential?
I'm not working on any compounds right now myself in any of my work. I support a number of startup companies in the psychedelic space as a business development capacity as a consultant. And with Lionheart Ventures, we have a number of portfolio companies that are working on various psychedelic and non-hallucinogenic compounds. I don't say I represent any of them, but yeah, for me, I'm more focused on the clinic activation side. As I mentioned earlier, helping clinics to become able to provide psychedelic clinical trials and get the DEA licensures and all those sorts of things. But yeah, if there was any companies in particular that you wanted to talk about, I could probably dive deep.
Well, thank you. I don't have any top of mind right now, but I mean, Xylo is a great one. I don't know if you're involved with them. You are?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, Lionheart invested in Xylo, yeah.
Okay. Early on?
Pretty early, yeah, I would say.
Yeah, that's very promising company. And Sam is doing a great job. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan of Sam and Josh's work there, yeah. Just looking forward to seeing their clinical data coming. And they believe they're starting their phase 1 later this year.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming here, stopping by. Enjoy the rest of your conference, Kevin, and it was a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure as well. Yeah, thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.